Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town Council meeting for June 3rd, 2024. If you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you. We're going to start off this evening with a proclamation because this week is Wear Orange. We celebrate Wear Orange Day to recognize end gun violence. And Wear Orange Day has sort of become 2 or 3 days now of recognition of the amount of violence that exists as a result of having guns. And, you know, it's not really, this isn't meant to be any type of political statement. Certainly when we talk about violence, we're not talking about, party affiliation or anything like that. I think it's easy to recognize that, every day a lot of innocent lives are lost, whether it's children on a playground or people who are just, that happen to be the victim of random shootings. And so this really sort of stems from the killing of a young girl a while back who was an innocent bystander. And her parents happened to wear orange after the fact because orange is the color that hunters wear. And it sort of was a symbol of, look, there's an issue, and if we can come together to work together just to reduce the type of crime that is causing, especially children, to lose their lives, then we should do that. So this is a proclamation in recognition of that. And I'm just going to read it briefly. So in Connecticut, 219 people were killed with firearms during 2023, which is the third highest number of gun deaths in more than a decade. And firearms are the second leading cause of suicide in Connecticut and account for half of all gun deaths in our state. And health experts, including the American Public Health Association, the American Medical Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, have declared gun violence to be a public health crisis. And firearms are now the leading cause of death of children and of teens in the United States. And pervasive crisis response drills that are needed to prepare our students in the case of a school shooting do create emotional harm. And more than 80% of child firearm suicides use a gun belonging to a family member, and 3/4 of all school shooters obtain the gun they used from their homes or the home of a relative. And abused women are 5 times more likely to be killed if the partner owns a firearm, and nearly 1 million women have reported being shot at by an abuser. And so therefore, on June 2nd, this would have been the 27th birthday of Hadiya Pendleton, a teen who was shot and killed as an innocent bystander in a park in Chicago, and whose friends chose to wear orange on her birthday because hunters wear the color orange to protect themselves. So now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Lisa J. Murata, Mayor of the town of Rocky Hill, Connecticut, do hereby proclaim June 2nd, 2024 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the town of Rocky Hill. And I encourage all of our residents to honor and remember all victims and all survivors of gun violence by wearing orange and continuing to work towards solutions to reduce violence in all its forms. Thank you. And so now we're going to move on to public comment. And this portion of the meeting is specifically set aside for comments from the public who are asked to limit their comments to 2 minutes. Any person interested in providing public comment remotely should email publicmeetings@rockyhillct.gov prior to 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting, at which time a link will be provided to attend the meeting as well as instructions on how to participate. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard from the public?
Hello, Alan Smith, 112 Old Main Street. Thank you all for bringing the new business item artistic crosswalk policy up this evening. I appreciate the work that the town staff has put in and obviously the council in talking with other people that are knowledgeable about this subject and that have talked to, talking to other organizations around the state, other towns that have done this, et cetera. I emailed the council email box earlier today, so hopefully you have a copy of just a couple items that I had questions about and some revisions to the draft policy that I think are pretty reasonable, especially considering this was just a draft. So to touch on those real quick, under the location section, item 3 and 4 basically spell out the areas that will not be considered for doing some type of aesthetic artistic crosswalk. My main question with that would just be, why do we want to limit our options by saying wouldn't be considered at all? A couple of those things were anywhere that a infrastructure project is proposed in the next couple years. And I think the term they use is vicinity. So my question would just be, what is a vicinity? Is that the same street? Is that 2 blocks away? And then the other one is about anywhere where an aesthetic crosswalk had already been done. I think the most obvious example of that would be like our faux brick crosswalks, not wanting to do those again. But my point with that would just be that these are already areas that people are used to having something a little bit different. So having it stay a little bit different, I think, is good and better than just changing what is an otherwise normal-looking crosswalk to now a aesthetic crosswalk. Next thing, under the design statement, it states, because the sole purpose of artistic crosswalks is aesthetic, this policy prohibits artistic crosswalks that communicate messages of any kind. I think that kind of defeats the point. Isn't art all supposed to have a message? Doesn't any art have message? Like that seems like the point. So I don't know if that was the wording that was intended there. Or if it's meant to be like a message to drivers or something like that instead. But I think that would severely limit the type of art that could be in a crosswalk if we're saying it can't convey a message. And then just a couple other points with that. Under the procedure section, it's recommended there's 2 members of the town council on a review panel. I just believe they should be from both parties. Or if we have a relevant third party in town sometime in the future, that may also be on there. And then more broadly, under the procedure portion, I would just suggest that we have a timeline. So a timeline to convene a panel or the review panel, and a timeline to render a decision. So it's not something that drags on, whether that's a month for each or a few weeks or whatever, I'm not sure. And then so lastly, in there, in my email today, you should also have a copy of that. I sent the most recent memo that I'm aware of from the Federal Highway Administration regarding aesthetically treated crosswalks. This came out in 2013, and it basically says that crosswalks with aesthetic properties versus painted crosswalks being used, it defines the difference between crosswalk being used as a traffic control device versus just for aesthetic purposes. And it makes it pretty clear that there's no discernible effect on safety. So if there's an aesthetic crosswalk versus a normal crosswalk, it isn't necessarily any difference with safety. And that also when colored pavement is used purely for aesthetic reasons, it doesn't constitute a traffic control device. And the main point being that in previous memos, they have, the FHA has said that they didn't recommend using colors that would confuse motorists. And it kind of implied like you got to stick with the normal ones. Well, this 2013 memo now clarifies that further. So In conclusion, I would just, once again like to thank the council and the town for considering this. I'm hoping we can loosen some of the terms and the items in here to provide a little bit more flexibility and options for more future proposals and adopt something that we can be proud of that will move us forward as a community with more public art and inclusivity. Thank you.
Derek Kalin, 116 Ridgewood Drive. Good evening. I wanted first to say as well, thank you to the council and to the town for preparing the crosswalk policy. I am very excited to see it. I think it's a great opportunity for us to build community through art. And I also wanted to share my concerns around design part 9, saying that artistic crosswalks should not communicate messages of any kind. I agree. It seems to limit the potential works that could go on there that might not be objectionable to anybody, like images from the town's past or messages of unity or things of that nature. So it might be worth exploring the language again. I was also excited to see the language because I think it fits into the Sustainable CT framework. Section 4.3, if I remember correctly, is around creative placemaking, and this fits pretty well in that. I did want to raise awareness to the council, if you folks aren't aware, that the next deadline for submitting for Sustainable CT is in August of this year. By my math, the last time I checked back in January, we were pretty close to getting silver certification. And a policy like this might be one of the things that pushes us over the edge. I do also want to raise a potential problem, which is that with Sustainable CT, the points that we earn are kind of given on a rolling basis. And so points that we have that get us bronze one year will go away after a period of time. So it may well be that while this thing would get us to a certain number of points, like I think 500 is required for silver, we want to make sure that there's as many points in the pipeline as possible, because I think some of the points from our bronze submission from 2022 might be starting to fade. So something to consider as you folks are preparing for the application. That's all for me. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Derek. Okay. Joanne. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. We don't usually have customers.
Hi, my name's Gail Curtin, 5 Beach Lane. I just want to voice my support for the crosswalk. I think if we're going to be Rocky Hill for all, we really need to walk the walk and talk the talk. And by the wording concerns me greatly. Not going to lie. I think it's very prohibitive. And as said, art always has a meaning, has a message. And I think it's a positive message for the crosswalk. So just wanted to voice my support. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Joanne.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. I have 2 public comments. The first one says, "Greetings from Rocky Hill Congregational Church. As the pastor of a church that is open and affirming of all individuals, a community that extends its welcome to the LGBTQ+ community and believes that each and every individual carries the image of our Creator, I am writing to enter my testimony regarding the proposed artistic crosswalk policy. The content of this policy appears specifically aimed at the LGBTQ+ community and feels rather discriminatory. Is the intent of this policy merely to block the rainbow sidewalk proposal? I am confounded by the restriction of any art with a message. What is art without a message? I suggest that this language be removed or modified. In this month of June, when communities around the globe, including ours, celebrate Pride, let us remember that the call to public service requires us to advocate for those who have too long been denied equal access to opportunity and well-being. With respect, Reverend David Figliuzzi. And the next one, all of you counselors have a copy of. It's from Ed Ciccarillo. And he said, Mayor Murata, Town Manager Carpentino, and the Town Council, I'm writing to share my revisions to the proposed artistic crosswalk policy. This draft policy was written in response to a request by town residents to the council to paint a pride crosswalk in the Old Town Center. I oppose this draft as written and suggest the following edits. Please see the attached marked up draft policy attached. Page 2, location. Number 3, vicinity is a vague word. The current draft reads, artistic crosswalks will not be considered if there are town infrastructure projects proposed to be constructed within 2 years in the vicinity of the crosswalk. Replace in the vicinity with the words on the proposed crosswalk. Revise it to read, artistic crosswalks will not be considered if there are town infrastructure projects proposed to be constructed within 2 years on the proposed crosswalk. Number 4, artistic crosswalks will not be considered on existing or new decorative crosswalks, stamped pattern asphalt or concrete. What is special about stamped crosswalks that you can't paint over them? This is where it was suggested a pride crosswalk was suggested to be painted. One could read into this that you are writing policy specifically to avoid a pride crosswalk in the Old Town Center. This language, as is, seems discriminatory. I suggest deleting that entire line. Design, number 9. Because the sole purpose of artistic crosswalks is aesthetic, this policy prohibits artistic crosswalks that communicate messages of any kind. This line should be deleted. This just doesn't make sense. All art conveys a message. Think of an ink blot test. If you exclude artistic crosswalks that communicate messages of any kind, you are excluding all art. In essence, this draft policy with this language bans art. This line should be deleted. Number 2, review panel. In the first bullet, add one from the majority and one from the minority party. Number 3, review criteria. Add some sort of timeline regarding the decision within 10 days or a month.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move on to appointments and resignations. We do not have any on our side. Do you have any, Counselor? Thank you.
No, we don't any.
Approval of the minutes, Town Council meeting May 20th, 2024, and budget workshop April 30th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the town council, May 20th, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay.
And I'll make a motion to approve the budget workshop, April 30th, 2024.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Thank you. Moving on to subcommittee reports, Finance.
The Finance Committee has not met since our last council meeting. We are tentatively scheduled for June 13th, but I have a request from 2 of our members to find an alternative date. So, Mona, I'll be reaching out to reschedule that date.
Moving on to Government Ops.
Government Operations has not had a meeting since our last town council meeting. We, kind of a slimmer story, we are scheduled on Monday, June 17th to meet, but we might need to reschedule or cancel that meeting depending on what there would be for an agenda. So, thank you.
Moving on to Public Safety.
Our next meeting is on June 17th. The last one was on May 20th, which report was produced at that time. And the next meeting is on the June 17th, like I said. Thank you.
Senior Liaison.
Senior Liaison did meet last week. I have a brief report. The Senior Center now has 2,256 members. 1,847 are residents of Rocky Hill. 409 are non-residents. Residents do not pay to be a member, and non-residents pay a $20 fee. Our lunch program is currently averaging between 40 and 45 people on a fairly regular basis. During their special lunches, they've had up to 130 people attend those. So very successful lunch program. We recently purchased a dishwasher with the ARPA funds, and we heard at a prior meeting that the dishwasher broke after 2 weeks. They made 5 efforts to repair the dishwasher. A new machine is on order, under warranty, so there'll be no cost to the town, and that should be installed. And we'll be back to getting away from the paper plates that we were looking to exit. On the human services side, the renters rebate program is now open through the summer, and this is for 2023. So any seniors on a fixed income that are renters can apply for this program by contacting Human Services at 860-258-2799. Also, the farmers market coupons are coming in for the summer. So seniors that are on a fixed income and do not exceed 185% of the income poverty guideline can get a $20 to $24 farmers market coupon. We did have a quick discussion. The farmers within Rocky Hill don't accept the coupons, so seniors, but they can use those coupons at any of the other local farmer markets. So Senior Services and Human Services is actually looking to coordinate a bus trip to one of the local farmers markets so they can use the coupons at that event. On the gardening side of things, we do have a community garden that benefits our food pantry. A local groundhog ate some of the plants before they were planted. So Human Services is looking for seedlings that anybody may have from their garden plantings that they'd like to donate. Our next meeting is July 22nd at 5 p.m.
I think we need a groundhog sustainable task force plan. Let's get on that. Okay. Land acquisition and farmland preservation.
Yeah, I'll be reporting for Fran. The Rock Hill Community Farm, the barn construction is scheduled for June 4th through the 7th. Lo and behold, today was the 3rd, and it was started. The town manager, as a reminder, did get the extension on the steep grant through September, so we're very much on target with that, with those dates, again, adjusted dates. There were some concerns about illegal dumping at the farm, and some of the issues or resolutions that were talked about were potential signage, maybe some type of cameras like trail cams, certainly gates down the road. So again, something that we did have an incident with some construction material being dumped. And then the only other thing we really discussed was the subcommittee is going to look at desirable properties of 5+ acres to determine if they can meet and for us to purchase development rights. So that's pretty much it. I know, Councilman Emanuel, if you have anything you want to add to, by all means.
That's a good summary. Thank you.
Liaison to the state rep and the state senator.
Okay. I just have a quick report. As the General Assembly is out, these should be briefer than when it's in session. So just a report from Senator Lesser briefly. Last weekend, Senator Lesser joined many of us up here marching in the Rock Hills Memorial Day Parade to remember and honor the brave men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice so that we may enjoy the blessings of liberty and freedom. Thank you to co-chairs Rita Chabra and Henry Vassell and all who made this year's observations possible. A new law recently signed by Governor Lamont and passed by state legislators will exempt veterans with permanent and total disability ratings with tax exemptions for personal property taxes, specifically for a primary residence or motor vehicle owned by those veterans. This will take effect October 1st. A new student loan repayment program will offer up to $50,000 in student loan repayments to eligible health care providers who commit to practicing full-time in underserved communities in the state for at least 2 years. Part-time options are also available, valued at $12,500 per year over 2 years. The program allows for both federal and private student loans to be repaid and will be overseen by the Department of Public Health to improve access to basic health care statewide by linking communities with health professionals, their groups, and their training programs. Recently, Senator Lesser joined leaders of Yukon Health and legislative colleagues in celebrating the opening of the Brain and Spine Institute in Farmington, a brand-new world-class facility that will help increase access to comprehensive spine care, cranial neurosurgery, neurology, and imaging all under one roof. The Department of Agriculture announced its Farmers Market Nutrition Program starts June 1st, a month earlier than usual, and will continue through November 30th. This program allows for participants to redeem benefits for locally grown farm products, including fresh and unprocessed fruit, vegetables, and eggs. Eligible participants in the Special Supplement Nutrition Program for women, infants, and child seniors over the age of 60 and disabled individuals, meaning income and housing guidelines, will receive $50 to $60 in increased funds. There are more than 200 certified farmers and nearly 100 authorized redemption locations throughout the state, and more will be added during the season. And lastly, in the time since wrong-way driving systems were installed statewide, they've been triggered 30 times, with 22 of those 30 alerts preventing drivers from getting on the highway heading in the wrong direction. Successful turnarounds by potential wrong-way drivers have occurred in Danbury, Waterbury, Meriden, Windsor, and Farmington, among other locations. And nothing from Representative Kerry Wood, so we are good. Thank you.
Okay, school liaison.
No report tonight, thank you.
Capital Improvements Committee.
No report. We don't have a scheduled meeting date yet. We have to get one on the calendar for the summer.
Economic Development Subcommittee.
We also don't have a meeting, but we do have a request for a meeting. We're working on a tentative date sometime in late June.
Okay. Nothing on the consent agenda. Moving to old business discussion, possible action, amendment of Town Ordinance, Chapter 4, Capital Projects, Article 1, Section 4-1 and 4-2, use of general fund, undesignated fund balance. So, shall we, want to put a motion? Let's put a motion.
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the amended ordinance, Chapter 4, Capital Projects, Article 1, 4-1 and 4-2, use of general fund, undesignated fund balance, as was presented earlier in our public hearing.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. New business discussion, possible action, artistic crosswalk policy. So in our packets, we received a draft policy from our town attorney. Just going to grab mine. Ray, before we get started, did you have any comments? I don't know if you have comments.
I drafted this policy. I looked at 10 different municipalities across the United States, and also the ITE, which is the Institute of Traffic Engineers, and also with a reference to the FHWA and also MUTDC, if I don't have that correct. I also had our town attorney review it. He made some, in addition to a couple of typos, he did modify a paragraph that was of importance, I think. Number 9, paragraph 9. Just let me call this up here. Under design, paragraph 9, he added some wording there that would better protect the town and give the town some more leeway and say in what happens as far as having artwork being family-friendly for all ages, not discriminatory against any type of identity, sexual identity, gender, race, ethnicity, nationality, etc. Can I keep going? Can I mention the
No, just,
the revisions that were submitted?
sure, yeah.
I want to go to Mr. Ciccarello's revisions. Under the location section, he had recommended deleting the in the vicinity of, construction proposed within the vicinity, and he recommended within 2 years on the crosswalk. I have no issue with that. That's reasonable. Number 4, those decorative crosswalks were installed over the years with state grant money and town matching funds, at $700 to $900,000 projects that we did over the years from 2012 up to 2019. So, again, my recommendation would be to keep it, but it's obviously up to the town council. And then on the next page, number 9, regarding the appropriateness, as well as Mr. Smith, he had the same comment. That first sentence, eliminate the in-quality workmanship. So it would say appropriateness of subject matter is of utmost importance. That second sentence, I have no issue with that being eliminated either. There are 5 other, maybe 6 other crosswalks that surround this municipal campus that are not textured pavement. So there are many opportunities. And also, this policy allows decorative or artistic crosswalks on any town street with a speed limit of 30 miles per hour or less. So it's a town-wide policy. Next page, review panel, as well as Mr. Smith's comments, 2 members from the town council, 1 from majority, 1 from minority. It makes sense. Timelines to be determined. We need timelines as with any application. And that's all I have on this.
Well, we can talk about this a little bit, but I think we've all talked about it a bit in our caucuses. I know, Councilor O'Sullivan, you and I have shared some similar concerns, and so I don't know if you'd like to maybe go first. And
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
you're welcome.
Yeah, I'll tell you candidly that this whole policy is pretty much the opposite of what I hoped would come out of this process. When this very worthy project was presented to us, I was in support of getting legal advice on how to implement this one specific project in a legally prudent manner. And I raised the issue of, let's do this in a way that doesn't risk an argument that we have created some type of a public forum, which opens up other people to potentially push upon us messages to be displayed that we as a town may not agree with. But if we confine this to the town expressing its own message as opposed to inviting public messages, we should be okay. So let's get some legal advice to do that. Instead, what we have here is really the creation of a public forum. I mean, the opposite of what I wanted. And I think the opposite of what is in our interest right now. So this language that people have aptly zeroed in on, so, quote, because the sole purpose of artistic crosswalks is aesthetic, this policy prohibits artistic crosswalks that communicate messages of any kind, close quote. I mean, what nonsense. This language would ban the very project that sparked this whole thing, which is the Pride design, which is supposed to convey a message. But the reason, I think I understand why town attorney inserted that language, because it's supposed to support the next sentence, which says, quote, accordingly, by establishing this policy, the town is not and does not intend to designate artistic crosswalks as public forums, close quote. So this extremely thin legal argument that I think we're trying to construct here is, well, we're prohibiting communication of any kind, so therefore it can't be a public forum. What nonsense. That is so transparently false, no judge would fall for that. Sure, of course, what this whole policy does is create a public forum. And you can deny all you want that the notion is, that anyone is actually communicating a message, but that is absolute nonsense. So, I don't think the town attorney would allow us to remove that one offending sentence, because that's supposed to provide this extremely flimsy legal support for the idea of, oh, we're not creating a public forum. So the whole thing falls apart. So you can't take that out without undermining this very flimsy premise that we're not creating a public forum. I mean, this whole thing needs to be torn up. Start over again and tell the town attorney, do what we told you to do. Give us guidance on how to implement this one project. Let's not create this whole Pandora's box thing. So this proposal, or anything like this, what's being presented for us, I will vote against it.
May I comment? Town attorney didn't draft as I did, so it's on me. I sent it to him for review. He did recommend, and I did ask, are we better off without a policy like this? And he indicated no. He said we're better off with a policy that gives some objectivity and a path for people. So that's what, it's not the town attorney, it was me, so.
Well, this notion, look, this notion about we're not creating, we're not communicating messages and we're not intending to create a public forum, that came from some lawyer somewhere, whether it's you found it from other people's, okay, whatever, but that's lawyer stuff that, and I assume our town attorney reviewed that, and that probably would be of interest to the town attorney, but again, pulling out this stuff about it doesn't communicate anything would undermine that whole premise of it's not a public forum. There's no question in my mind that this whole construct here would be to create a public forum. And I don't think that was the task here. We were presented with one project. We are in accord here that we would like to implement this one project. Let's figure out a way to do it that doesn't create, other types of problems for us. And now what we have is a policy here that I think that just opens the door to all types of complications down the road that it's just unnecessary. Let's just deal with what's in front of us rather than greatly overthinking and overcomplicating this thing.
I think too that, I think everyone has their own concerns, right? And rather than go through this document now, because it may change, I would propose that we could send it back to the attorney and get another proposal, take a look at it. Once we have that draft proposal, we could then work amongst our caucuses so that we're not sitting here debating line by line by line, and come back either at the next meeting with our draft suggestions or provide them before the next meeting. But I'm trying to be most efficient. I don't know. Councilor Thoreau?
I'm wondering if it might be more effective if the caucuses kind of come up with some ideas and then have something to present to the town attorney to look at?
Yeah, but
maybe that might be more constructive, because I don't think they get what we're
Yeah, so
aiming at.
exactly. So can I piggyback on that? That's an excellent point, because I don't even know, hearing Bill, that the goal of this policy is clear to me, right? It seems to be in contradiction to what this caucus understands versus what the town manager understands it should be. So first we need to clarify what we are doing here. Are we creating a public forum or not? That's the number one question. And what the answer to that question is will dictate what that policy is going to be. So I'm not even clear on the fundamental question anymore, just hearing the conversation here. So I agree with you that it should be drafted and then presented to the town attorney, and we go that way. But it seems like what Bill is saying is it's in contradiction to like what he understands as the goal of the policy itself. He thinks of it as a narrow one-time act, which I don't think this policy is doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I want to understand.
Well, it
it.
wasn't meant to be a narrow one-time act. It's meant to be a policy that would cover multiple expressions of art. And I think what Councilor O'Sullivan is saying is we don't want it to be a public forum. So, but I don't want to create the policy. I think that's problematic.
I think it's one thing to invite people to submit suggestions to us, as happened here. The suggestion was made to us initially at public comment, and then I think through the Inclusion Commission, for the town to express this message as an expression of what the town stands for through its elected officials. That's one thing. If we want to have a policy by which people similarly make suggestions to the town to issue its own messaging, that's one thing. That is not at all what I'm seeing here, though. What I'm seeing here is a mechanism for people to basically submit and execute their own artwork on town property with the town's permission, subject to certain guidelines, but in final analysis, people creating and putting out their own messages. That's the distinction between the town issuing its own message versus creating a forum for other people to express their messages. And the mayor and I had a conversation, and one analogy I gave was, and we have an example this evening where the mayor, issues a proclamation or a statement commending a person for doing certain acts that benefit the community. That's the town speaking, conveying its own message. That does not create a right in anyone else to make us convey another message. Well, then you have to compliment this person for that. No, this is the town conveying its own message versus sponsoring a forum where you have something to say. Well, I can't have that person not say what they want to say. And that's the distinction there that I was seeking legal guidance on. How do we keep this only as suggestions to the town to execute its own message versus opening it up to a forum that we then have to curate and potentially getting ourselves into legal hot water because we're discriminating against certain kinds of messages. This proposal here seems to be in that second category. It's opening it up, despite all this protesting too much. Oh no, it's not a public forum. Yeah, it is. And that's the approach that we should not be following. So if the town attorneys can give us guidance on how to be not to do it that way at all, I think it's way narrower, it's a lot simpler. It's just making suggestions for the town to consider, but doing it in a way that it's the town expressing its own message. And I think that's the critical distinction in terms of staying out of legal hot water.
Does it make sense to have the attorney come to the next meeting, or are you comfortable relaying that message?
I will relay that message, and this will be off the table until we hear back from the town attorney. I understand completely
Yeah.
what the intent is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all thought this was going to be a pretty mundane task, right? And we don't want to reinvent the wheel. And if other municipalities have similar policies, then it would make sense to try to follow those, right? Because we're all in the same situation. But it just seems a little...
Can I ask what towns we did get that information from? Were there any from, you said nationally. Do we have any?
Mansfield, Norwalk, in Connecticut. Mansfield, Norwalk, Stowe, Vermont, Middletown. And then I went into Royal Oak, City of Royal Oaks, South Portland, Maine, even Mobile, Alabama for their purpose. I pulled some things from there. And again, FHWA and MUTD.
Okay.
And an obscure city up in Washington State. What I found, I started digging into this, the second part of this, as far as the installation, that has to be followed as far as the type of paint used, the traverse white lines. Those are all required traffic signalization required by the state. So those have to be maintained, and it has to be under the supervision, the installation under the supervision of the state highway, not the state highway, the highway superintendent. So the last sections that deal with installation type of material, those need to remain, but the rest of it could be dismantled and then reassembled.
You can even make those subject to the applicable town departments, or,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even have to delineate them, just, it's got to go through the planner and so forth, and that would,
So we can do that
they
too.
vary
Yes.
project to project.
Steve Sopolak is the local traffic authority, and Joe Lentini, they would be overseeing this anyways. Good.
If I could just comment, because in our public comments, there was a comment read in that this is an intent for the council to prevent a pride sidewalk. And I don't believe that's the case. I know, speaking for myself, it is not the case. What we are trying to do is put a policy in place to basically manage the risk to the town. And that is what our role is as a council. It's not whether or not this is a worthy cause or the next one isn't, because we've already heard about the messages of hate and the little leaflets dropped in lawns. Well, what happens when that group comes before us and says, hey, we want to have one, and we say, well, you don't meet our criteria, and what happens? The town gets sued. And then we as a council sit here and go, well, we tried the best we could, but we didn't want to do that. So I think that's important. Ray, there was some important pieces in here, because you did ask for some sponsorship. And we need to clarify if the sponsorship can be a nonprofit, a resident, and who was putting this artistic display within our town. And then you also had under installation, you asked the applicant to sign a waiver of liability, which I think is a great step. But if we put a waiver of liability into somebody that has no insurance and may not have any assets, we're not protected. So we need to make sure that we're protecting the town. It's really about risk management from where I'm sitting. It's not about the particular piece. It's, unfortunately, we had a really worthy presentation on a Pride sidewalk, but it opened up the can of worms that we don't have a policy, and it's not as simple as saying yes to this one and no to that one, because, we're subject to litigation.
I think it potentially could be if we do it right. I really do. I mean, all that happened here, as I see it, is a suggestion was made at public comment. It was taken up by the Commission on Inclusion, and they're saying, okay, hey, town, could you issue this message on behalf of the town? Again, Councilor Greenspan, when you talk about applicants, for example, I don't think we should be talking about applicants. An applicant, to me, that suggests a person who's looking for permission to execute their own project, and I think that's the distinction we have to make here. I don't think we can have applicants or other people physically executing these projects, because then it becomes, their expression as opposed to the town's expression. And again, that's where I was hoping to get some more refined legal guidance on how to do that in a prudent manner.
If I could just follow up with that, and where I kind of see it differently is if we have somebody coming to put a sidewalk or crosswalk in that has no tie to the town, we've basically created a venue for marketing, right? If someone comes in from out of state and says, hey, you have a process and now I could put this crosswalk in, we don't know what the message is, we don't know what the tie is. I'm trying to keep it within our town because we're talking about town property. That's the only intent there.
I think the only thing to add, because everyone had some really good points. The point, I know the points come up about whether the stamped crosswalks should be on or off limits for these. These stamped crosswalks were done purposely with intent for a particular look, for artistic reasons. I don't think if we put the Pride crosswalk down, we don't want somebody else to cover up the Pride crosswalk with something else, just like we want to cover these artistic crosswalks with another artistic crosswalk, you know what I'm saying? So I would be in favor of whatever language we decide with the other, based on all the other topics, is that the stamped crosswalks are not to be, have these, painted artistic work on it.
And Councilor Levine, that brings to my mind, one very specific thought that popped into my head. So, if let's say we were to implement the Pride crosswalk, and it invited graffiti, and some of that graffiti might be supportive, and some of it might be unsupportive. If we were to allow the graffiti to proliferate, that could mean that the town is sponsoring a public forum. So that's something we need to police. And then if the town started selectively removing or covering up some of the graffiti but not other graffiti, then we're getting into First Amendment territory. So there's even when it's a town created thing rather than a sponsored one, there are ways that it could potentially evolve into a public forum, and we could find ourselves kind of on a slippery slope. Those are the kind of things that we need legal guidance on.
See, this was initially a very simple concept. And I started doing research, and no, we should do this, we have to do this, but we have to look at this. It just kept snowballing. So we are going to dismantle this and start from scratch with that concept in mind.
Okay, I think we've exhausted the topic. We're ready to move on.
Vote to table, or
We have a motion on the table.
Yeah,
do we have to make a motion to table?
well,
You can
we are,
deny the motion, or you can say no, or you can withdraw the motion.
right,
Was on
I
its
think we should
discussion?
withdraw.
I didn't make.
Discussion of possible action, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we don't have, no obligation to act, right?
I'm not.
There's already a motion on the table.
Oh, there was, okay. What was the motion?
anybody
Who-
make a
who
motion?
made it?
Motion?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think we didn't make the motion. I don't think.
No, I don't think anybody did.
There's no motion in second, we just discussed.
started
We just started talking.
Okay,
You're dreaming motions now.
yeah, I'm dreaming motion.
So then, do we have table, or can we just
move on.
consider table because we didn't put a motion in to do anything? Is that? Do we have to actually table it, or no?
You should to
I
table it.
I think with that, we should table it, yeah.
Motion to table.
All right, so with that, I'll make a motion to, let me bring it back up. To table New business item 1, new business item A, discussion possible action artistic crosswalk policy.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Moving on to the mayor's report. Let's see. So we had an incredible Memorial Day parade and ceremony on the town green. I want to thank all of our sponsors for everything that they do and for continuing to support the town on the very important day of remembrance of our fallen heroes. I think each year the parade gets bigger and bigger, and we have an incredible parade committee. And most notably, our biggest cheerleader, Rita Chabra, who does an incredible amount of work every year. So I just want to give her a special shout out and say thank you, because she really holds it all together year after year and makes it bigger and more memorable for the entire community. And I think this year the best addition that she brought in were the bagpipers. It was just you were marching and it just felt very solemn, and that really is the purpose. It's not necessarily celebratory. It should be a solemn day, and so that really just it felt that way. And so I want to thank her for doing that. And then by the time we got to the town green, it started to pour heavily, but people still stayed, and I think that's a huge testament to who we are as a community and that unity and sense of pride that we feel in coming together on days like that. So I also want to thank our community members who attended both the parade and especially those who stayed for the ceremony on the green. Yesterday, we were very fortunate that BAPS, which is one of the temples in Newington, organizers, moved their annual walk, which is called In the Joy of Others, from Newington to Rocky Hill. And it was really very exciting to be the host town for this really incredible annual fundraiser. And this year, they raised funds for the Newington Police Department, the Newington Fire Department, and the Rocky Hill Fire Department. And so I want to thank that organization from the bottom of my heart for bringing that very, very special day and that special walk here to our community in Rocky Hill. It really provided us with a sense of purpose and unity for that day, and it is very important to our community, so thank you. The barn is going up. Our counselor, Dave Savini, mentioned that. I went by today, and it looks really, really cool. My son and I were watching them put it together, and our community videographer, Michael Toole, was out there. He's got some super cool drone shots, and he is sort of going from the very beginning, and he will sort of track progress with his drone video and put something together for all of us to watch when the barn is finished. Let's see what else. Our Pride Day is coming up on June 7th from 3:30 to 6 p.m. at Elmridge Park. It's absolutely free with lots of fun activities and food, and I encourage everyone to come out in that afternoon, get to know your neighbors and your community, and help us celebrate. And then another day of celebration will be on June 19th, again back at Elmridge Park. From 12:30 to 2:30, or actually it might be from noon to 2:30, where we will celebrate our first annual Freedom Day celebration. And again, that's going to be food and entertainment, a motivational speaker. It's going to be a wonderful afternoon, so I hope you mark your calendars and come join us for that. Our CROG Policy Board meetings have been going wonderfully. CROG has so many great things coming up for municipalities to participate in. And so I'm looking forward, to sort of working on some collaborations with other municipalities to get some things done here in Rocky Hill, perhaps more affordably. Our consortium of chief elected officials also met last week through Connecticut Workforce Partners. We elected some new board members to the board of directors, and we also approved the new 3-year plan, which outlines the vision and the operations for the North Central region of Connecticut. And for those who don't know, Capital Workforce Partners are responsible for increasing participation, clearly, in the workforce, but really for working with marginalized groups, young people who may not have a high school education, certainly youth who do not have college education, people who are re-entering the workforce, and people who are transitioning back into the workforce. So I'm super excited to see the programs, and I'm really excited to see that Capital Workforce Partners is sort of getting into the suburbs now, because typically in the past they had a very huge presence in some of our bigger cities, but we didn't necessarily engage with them. And now there's lots of opportunity to do that. So all good news. And I think that's about it.
Town manager's report, my turn.
Your turn.
My turn. The Community Resiliency Plan that was been initiated through the Connecticut Sustainable CT and through our Rocky Hill Task Force. The required community survey was completed by the core team, and an invitee list was completed and sent to the Nature Conservancy, and they will be setting workshop dates. We don't know when yet, but that'll be a planning exercise. Just to refresh some memories, the Community Resiliency Plan is a program managed by the Nature Conservancy to develop a community resiliency plan for municipalities. And a benefit of us doing this now is that we will be able to utilize most of this information, hopefully, in our plan of conservation and development. This should be a large component and a cost saver for us. And the Affordable Housing Committee had met. They have elected a chair. They went through some tasks, which include CHFA presentations to the town council and to the public, researching affordable housing funding, and review of the current housing inventory, and to determine what's considered affordable. And also researching first-time homeowner incentives. So they're on their way, full force. The Community Development Office, they have been looking at some of the ordinances that they deal with frequently, and they have identified a number of them, and they continue to identify a number. This first grouping is noise, parades, peddling, sidewalks, housing standards and roads. A little typo there. I'll be talking to Steve Sopolak in the future to find out what needs to be changed in these particular ordinances. A lot of them just require updates because they're pretty old. They've been around for a long time. As far as some capital projects going on with community development, we're waiting for authorization from Prague and DOT still to bid the Elm Street and Century Hills Phase 1 sidewalks, and also waiting again from Prague and DOT on the award of our lots of grants for the sidewalks along Glastonbury Avenue and Century Hills Phase 2. We're revising some internal processing of workplace injury reporting to CIRMA. The revision involves centralizing all the processing to HR and finance, thereby increasing efficiencies in the reporting. We have started cross-training staff between HR and finance as well. This last item on my list is something I'm probably going to regret in my retirement. But I'll be initiating, I believe I'm going to be calling it the Town Manager's Corner, starting in July. doing periodic video updates of happenings around town, posting it on the website, having conversations with staff, hopefully some town councilors coming in, different committee chairs. So hopefully it will be a fun event. A few more things I want to add that came in fairly late. Mobilization and site work has begun, will begin June 20th for the pickleball courts, and they should be completed no later than September 1st. The Elmridge Pool opens on June 18th, and Summerscape Day Camp begins June 24th. The transfer station hours. We have modified the hours, so they're still Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. However, on Thursdays, they'll be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
After July 1st.
After July 1st, thank you. And Eversource will be starting a project. They're in the early phases. We don't have a lot of details. Within their right-of-way between the Berlin substation on Beckley Road and on the Rocky Hill substation on West Street. They plan to install a additional fiber optic cable between the substations, hoping to improve communications. On June 10th, they will have some of their project team out in the field in the right-of-way to perform some of the reconnaissance work. So they will keep us posted on far as when that project will actually initiate, and we'll see some construction out there possibly. I believe that's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Good night, everyone.